I'm Tristan Hagen, and I'm currently a senior in Fargo South High.
And my name is Mariah, and I'm a junior right now.
My name is Susmita, and I'm a junior right now.
And my name is Leah Juelke, and I'm the English Education Specialist at Fargo South High School. Writing is so important in the English learner curriculum because it really helps the students express themselves. And a lot of times students want to say things, but their oral language is not at that level yet. So writing is a way for them to express themselves, but especially if they don't have that oral language experience yet. And because it's such an important skill, you use writing and speaking throughout your whole life, no matter where you go or what you do. And so I really wanted to focus on writing for those reasons. The beginning of our year together with our students is we do a lot of team building exercises. Like I start the first day outside and we do relay races and they love it. Some of them don't like to run, they don't have the right shoes on, but we do a lot of like relationship building and checking in, and like I had Maria and her brother both, and we speak Spanish, so we kind of start getting this relationship. And I realize with my students that it's very hard for a lot of them to trust in general. Building the relationship very first before we do anything in the classroom helps to really create that foundation. So when they do write and they're writing about things that are a little more challenging, they feel comfortable in the classroom. And then we do things together with their peers so that they feel comfortable with them because they know they're going to have to share it later, the type of writing that we do for the project. So I think that is the foundation of any good writing for any classroom, is to be able to have a close connection with your students, share about, what they did, their activities, who they are, celebrate their celebrations with them when they get a grade in another class they're excited about. So being able to be that person for the students, I think really helps facilitate writing, listening, speaking, everything in the classroom, because you have that foundation.
Can you give any little examples of some of those activities that you do starting up to build that trust and build that sense of family community?
At the beginning of the year, they also interview each other. They kind of do like a where you're from and what would you like, pizza and all that. So they do kind of a very, not as much as of a narrative for exchange, but just kind of a get to know you at the beginning. And then they have to come up and they have to present to the class, okay, Jenny likes pizza and Jenny is from here. So they just kind of do a little oral report on their partners. And in that, we talk about applauding for each other in that respect. And we do a lot of talking about in different cultures, do we clap after we do things, eye contact. We kind of go over those basic cultural things at the beginning of the year, and we do them through kind of like presentation projects. So I get them up and talking right at the beginning. So like our students not going to open up to you if they don't feel like you value them, if you don't feel like they respect them. And with teenagers, that's really tricky. And so it's hard to find the right day and time where we're going to be willing to listen and open up. But if you just be that very constant person there in the classroom, that's always positive. And if they have a bad day and they aren't so nice that day, you just meet that with, oh, I hope you have a better day, the constant positivity. Because it really goes back to how would you like to be treated as an adult? We forget that teenagers have a wealth of emotions and feelings, and they are not adults. They are still teenagers and children. And so it's challenging to build that relationship with the students. And it takes a lot of effort and positivity and really understanding the adolescent mind for a teacher to do. And then when you add in trauma, that's a whole nother story. That's a lot of more trust issues than a regular teenager. And just trying to find in the culture too, what's appropriate in some cultures is not in others. And when you have a mix of like 20 different countries out of your 40 kids, it's challenging to find that common area. But I really base my classroom in the first couple days of just that team building. We're in this together, and that this is a safe place, and really building on respect and a positive attitude. And those are the two things we go back to every single unit, every single time. We just talk about it because that applies to everyone, every culture, and it's what we want as a family in our classroom. And really doing any type of writing, any type of learning in my classroom, if their needs aren't met, if they don't feel valued, it's not going to happen.
What I remember is like a couple years back then, like my English wasn't great at all. Like it wasn't good at all. Like I have a really heavy accent, but I still do right now. So it's like when you talk to people and people they don't understand it, it's awkward. Like when you try to express your feeling, just when people don't get it, it's like, should I stop right here? Like I just don't want to say anything now. I just want to turn around and walk away. But after a couple years back, like it just started getting normal. Like speaking English for 15 minutes. Well, I had to do it at first, and then I at least try it, and then after that, I felt good about it. So I just kind of get normal to it, and then now I just feel it's not that strange anymore.
One actually fun get to know you activity we do encompasses a lot is we stand in a circle. It's kind of a theater thing. We stand in a circle and I have an action for my name. So I say, my name is, and I say, Miss J, and I do this cheerleading thing. And I said, so the next person is going to say their name and they're going to do an action for their name. And then we all have to repeat it around the circle. So it's a theater game that it goes around and everyone says, Miss J, Miss J, Miss J, and they have to do the action that I did. And so then in there's often some giggles and there's often some like, oh my God, you just did that type of mentality. And we always stop and say, okay, it's okay that we can act silly here. It's okay that they have a different accent and they say that, because some people are like, what'd you say? Like, what was your name? And so we kind of approach those things as they come up in the class. And I'm just very nonchalant about it. Like, oh, it's okay. I have an accent. You have an accent. It's fine. Let's keep going. You know, you have to be really nonchalant about some of those things because, again, we're working with teenagers and we're embarrassed and we don't want attention put on us. Because if a teacher does not address those things as they're happening, the student often will just turn off and say, okay, I'm not talking in that class. I don't feel comfortable. So really creating that safe place by addressing things as they happen. And sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes kids do awkward things and you have to stop and say, I literally say, I said this today to some student, I said, that was really awkward. How about you don't do that? So I think they need some realism and they appreciate that because I don't want that other student, me just to ignore that and that other student to kind of be like, oh my gosh, like I bet she heard it and she didn't say anything.
But how do you start that process of making it safe and comfortable to write?
So one of the first things we do for our project is we actually don't write, we listen. So one of the first things I do is I bring in a speaker from somewhere else. This year it was Daniel Trust, and he was a Rwandan genocide survivor. And he flew in from New York for our project. So he spoke to the whole school in the theater about hope and about his journey as a survivor. And that was really powerful. And we talk about, before he came, we talk about sharing stories and what it means to share stories. And what kind of things should you share when you share a story, just very briefly. And then we're able to listen to a speaker like Daniel Trust. The first year we brought in John Dow, who is a lost boy of Sudan, and he came and did a similar speech. And then the other years we've done local refugee and immigrant adults that come in and speak to the students. So really it's just about hearing their stories first, and then we get back to the classroom and we start talking about what story could I tell, or what are some things that I could talk about in my story. And we focus on our journey to America because that's really the common theme of which everything my students have in common is they're from a different country.
And you learned that you had to write a whole story. What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I'll start. So I don't really like working on the computer because I was used to like books and stuff. So I also don't really like writing. But it was like kind of like exciting because you could like write whatever you wanted. It wasn't like you have a list, you have to do this. It was like something from your own experience.
My first reaction was to write a whole paragraph in English. That's really hard. And like, well, back in China, we do have English classes, and then I just never paid attention to it. Well, after I came to America, I have to, so.
Basically, I was like confused at first. And, I was like, what to write? I had no idea how to start, my writing.
In our classroom, and I have a lot of video examples of our projects that we've done. And by now the kids actually know about our Journey to America project. They know about our Romeo and Juliet movie that the kids make at the end of the year. And so they already come in excited about that and a little nervous. But I show them things that productions that we've already done in the years before, and that kind of really helps them see, oh, this is what we're going to be doing in class, and just kind of helps us as a community see where we're headed with that foundation of respect and positive attitude.
We partnered up with a mainstream English class here, and most of those students in that class were native Fargo-born students.
Okay.
And what we did is we did a modified narrative 4 type of exchange. And so narrative 4 is a story exchange that helps breed empathy. And so I was trained as a facilitator in narrative 4, but for my classrooms I did a modified one because narrative 4 is much more extensive than just a classroom activity. So for that, I had the students partner up, and they followed a protocol of an exchange where one student was, both students were given a prompt, and it said, tell a story from your childhood.
Okay.
And you could extend that, or you could modify it and say, tell a sad story, tell a happy story. Tell a story when you felt discriminated against. There's just tons of prompts you could use. And so we did the prompt of tell a story from your childhood, and we had the native students were able to tell a story wherever they were in their childhood and wherever our students were. And most of our students obviously were not in the US, so that kind of helped facilitate them thinking about things that happened to them as a child. And even now they're still, some of them are, still adolescents, so they could, even if they didn't want to focus too far back, they were able to choose, well, when I was 13, I came on the airplane to Fargo, and they could start there, wherever it was comfortable. So they had about 30 minutes with their partner, and they did 15 minutes of one person sharing a story with the other person active listening and not interrupting at all. And then they switched, and then the other person went ahead and gave their story. And as each person gave their story, they did actually take some notes. So they did just really bulleted pointed notes, so not really writing. And from there, then the next day we came back together. They went home, they thought about it. And the really fun thing about narrative 4 is that when you get back together in a circle, and we had 3 large circles within the larger room down the hall, is that you get to sit next to your partner. And if Susmita and I were partners, I would be able to stand up then when it was my turn. I have my notes, and I'm gonna take on the persona of Susmita. So I'm gonna say, hello, my name is Susmita, and I was born in Nepal. So I'm really internalizing her story, and then she's hearing her story told by me, and it's fun to see our students' faces when they hear the other person's story. I think it really shows that our students' stories are valuable to each other, and I think a lot of students say, I don't have a story, or it's not important, or who cares? And then they hear someone else telling the story, they're like, oh, I guess that was kind of neat. So we really continue the process of brainstorming through another narrative exchange.
Can you give us just a little overview of what is narrative 4 and how you use it to support this work with writers?
So narrative 4 is an international initiative to create empathy. And so the idea is that narrative 4, you share a story with somebody else, and you're brought together in a group that has a common question. And oftentimes they bring together people that have different points of views, such as the people who are victims of gun violence, and then those who are advocates of owning guns. And there's just some great videos online that they show. They did one in Fargo, North Dakota, with someone who was a proponent of banning refugees in Fargo, in North Dakota, and then they brought together some of those people that were refugees. And the BBC did a piece on it. Now, if you watch some of the videos on YouTube of narrative 4, it does give kind of an example of how to do narrative 4, just kind of like what I laid out, kind of the process of that. But it doesn't go like deep into some of the documentation and other stuff you have to do. And really what educators probably do need in the classroom is just kind of the idea of what they are supposed to get to, and then they can modify it and change it for their classroom. You really internalize someone else's story, and that's helps to promote empathy. And so it's a very interesting type of dynamic. And there's also a visual that the person will make for you and give it to you the next day to show what I heard from your story. This is how I visualized it.
With the narrative 4 one, I actually did a video and documented all of our experiences with narrative 4 the first time we did. And I did one class, actually partnered with the native English class. The other class I had partnered with each other. And so that was a really interesting dynamic. I did notice that our classes partnered with each other. They shared a little more deeper than the class that was partnered with the native English speakers. Although I was very surprised at the progress and what they shared with a stranger.
Yeah.
But I kind of had a feeling that the other way also would help them get going with their ideas and their feelings. And so it was a really interesting experience just to see which worked. And this year we did it with each other. And that was a very valid experience for the students.
Was it cool to hear someone else empathize with your story? What was that like for you?
So my story, I used to tell Juelke that it was the most boring story, and she was like, "No, it's not." But then when we shared our stories, you know, like in my story I wrote that I brought my pets with me, and I thought that was a normal thing, right? But some people found it like very interesting, and I didn't know that. So sharing like different stories, and also listening from other kids like shocking stories that like I thought could never happen to anyone. It was very interesting.
So after the first couple of years, we decided to bring in Imagine Thriving, which is a mental health organization. And so they came in and did activities with the students and talked about it's okay to tell your story, even if you have feelings, sad feelings, happy feelings. Feelings are a lot to deal with. And so when things come up, or if there's past trauma that's there, they just created a really safe space to explain that when you talk about things from the past, you may have certain feelings about them, and they may be really sad feelings. And they brought in resources, phone numbers and examples and videos of ways that people can reach out, because cultures are very different. Cultures handle trauma and emotions in different ways. And so I think it's really important to let our students know that we as a culture think it's okay to share feelings, to cry, to be sad, and to be happy. Like those are feelings that we're okay with. We don't have to hide them. And where to get help if you feel anything that you can't handle on your own. And so that was something I implemented in the program a couple years into it, and now they come every year and do activities with the students, and they do it in such a discreet way. They don't just come in and be like, "Hey, let's talk about trauma," but they do it in a very discreet way where the students are having fun and contributing, and they have lots of really great questions.
Are there any structures that you provide for them that help unlock that story?
So now we write on paper, and to start I give them a timeline. So they have an arrow, and they have to start when they were born, and then they finish present day. So the events that they have to add on, any major events, so we usually say write at least 20 events of your life on there, and that really sparks some of the, oh yeah, this happened to me. And we go through an example timeline and talk about births and deaths and parties and leaving a place, and even just going from West Fargo to Fargo. Different types of moves, and that's usually when I see a lot of students go, okay, wait. And I look at the timeline and I show them, you don't tell me your whole story of your life from birth to now, but we're gonna pinpoint a moment. So I said, here's the moment when your mom said, "Hey guys, we're going to America," while you were in the refugee camp. That would be a good place to start. And that could be a place where you remember, oh yeah, what did we do next? Did we go to the office? Did we have to say goodbye to grandma? Those are the parts of the life, the major moments they start to plan out on the paper. And then from there, then they take it further, and as some of them mentioned, they do some bullet points, they make their own little outline, and that really kind of starts to frame their writing. Once they start writing the project, we actually have NDSU and Concordia students come into the classroom on a daily basis for about 6 weeks. And so, you know, some days we have 5 and some days we have 15. And generally my classes are around 20 students per class. And so this was a real key to the project, is being able to have the technical help with the writing. And so being that I'm one teacher and I have 20 kids in a classroom, I can't get to every single student and be able to sit there and really go through their stories and their sentences as I should be, right? Because of the need and the gaps in their education, there are things that they don't know about writing that other students who grew up here, you know, do. So having the university students and professors actually came in and sat one-on-one with students, and they weren't allowed to touch the computer, but the student had the computer and they would be doing writing, and the teacher or staff would be sitting right next to them in a way of, okay, what can I help you with? And then Susan Mita would say, I just don't know what to write here. So, okay, let me read it. Well, that's interesting. Well, tell me more about this part. Or hey, you need a period right there. Or you need a comma right there. And so once I saw that, that was a pretty successful trial of having some of those students in class. Then I reached out to more classes of students at NDSU and Concordia, and the response was amazing. There's a lot of university professors and students that really want to have those experiences in the high school, and it's really an untapped resource that should be used. And so we did notice that once our college friends started coming, they didn't want to leave. Like, they kept coming for fun rather than for their class. So we had definitely a bunch of those students that would just come in and say, I have this day off, can I come in? I said, of course. So it was really a great experience. I also had students be able to make a connection with a college student, and sometimes they'd get off task and they would start talking about, hey, so what's college like? And I just allowed that because I think that's a great connection for our students to realize that college is a possibility, and they may not have anyone they know that is a college student. So that was another like unexpected benefit of that partnering during the writing process. So for the last 2 years, we've had winners, or 3 years, we've had winners in the Art Scholastic Writing Contest. So I saw that there was a contest, and we had already finished our stories, and I asked, does anybody want to enter this contest? Do you have a story? Is that something you're interested in? And then whoever wanted to, we entered, and I would help.
But you really created a lot of authentic audiences for them. So what was that? How did you make those choices? What was that like?
Well, starting the first year, it really was just me reading them. And then I was just so like, wow, these are amazing stories, without any of those other pieces of the project together that I had asked some students, can I share this with your other English teacher or your social studies teacher? And they're like, oh, I don't really care, but sure, why not? And the other teacher's like, wow, you gotta do something with this. And I thought some of the things that they shared were really useful for teachers to know, to be able to accommodate and differentiate for our students, especially if there's things that happened to them in the past, or they didn't go to 7th grade because they missed that whole year. Well, hey, that makes sense. How as a teacher, how can I help you as a teacher then? And so those things were just eye-opening. So then that's when I really thought that we needed an audience for these stories.
Can you just explain the purpose of the website and kind of how you're using this and how it's furthering the mission of these stories?
So when we first started the stories in 2013-14 timeframe, I was thinking of a place to put them, and I didn't have a website myself, and I'm not very good at technology when it comes to those things. First of all, we just had the stories. So our kids actually go to flipsnacks.com. So this is this is fun because you create a ebook, and you actually can turn the pages digitally. And so if you go back to my website, you can actually click on one. We get this hosts the ebook, and we get the link to put on our website. And you can scroll down, and then there's a highlighted title. That's gonna go to their Flip Snack book. But the student created their cover, and then they uploaded their story. And there's this cool little swoosh sound too sometimes when you do the pages on some of them. So that's really neat. We just wanted a site where anybody could access the stories, because we're really about trying to get the stories out to the community, internationally, wherever anyone has the internet, they can read these stories. And our goal was to teach people about our new refugee and immigrant neighbors, and that's kind of the goal. So to make it free. And then also,
so just being able to share, because the secondary thing that happened with this project is the first thing is getting them writing and feeling comfortable with writing. The second thing is sharing their stories about coming to the U.S. and helping teach the community about who our new neighbors are, and really sharing those stories, because when you learn those stories about the hardships and the joys that these refugees and immigrants go through, it's hard not to like them. You know what I mean? So really just educating the community was the secondary focus of this project. And we actually had a PD where all the Fargo South staff sat, and our students shared their stories through a panel. And that's what Marie mentioned of how a teacher came and said, I had no idea. And so for teachers, it's very valuable to get to know your students because then you can accommodate and differentiate.
It goes back to, I graduated from Fargo South actually. So I went overseas, I taught overseas for 5 years, and then I came back here. When I was a student here at Fargo South in 2001 is when I graduated. Our population was very non-diverse. And so out of 500 graduating seniors, we could maybe had 10 students that were not Caucasian. And so coming back as a teacher now, 6 years ago, I was very shocked at the population. It wasn't the school and the faces that I was used to, and it was better actually, because there's so many different perspectives and different cultures and different foods. I mean, the kids bring me food all the time. It's amazing, the different culture. I just love learning about different cultures and languages. And so I think our students benefit from that in general because of the diverse perspectives, and just looking at things in different ways and going out there in the world. Our world is not all Caucasian, and that's really important for our students in Fargo to realize. Now, the older population, my grandma's age, my parents' age, they grew up here with that population, and that's just what you grow up with. If you don't leave Fargo, if you don't make a point of getting to know other people, and it's hard for you to really kind of step out of your comfort zone. North Dakota here, we're very passive aggressive, and we won't straight up say something to you at the store, but we may give you a look. You know, that's kind of how people are, and that's kind of sad. And our students who are new from other countries, they come in and they're kind of like, well, people don't yell things at me. They don't seem to not like me, but they don't talk to me, and they don't reach out to me. And so knowing that and being from here and understanding that, I was thinking, well, what are some ways that we can get those people involved with understanding about the new neighbors, so there's not as much racism and discrimination, because we're up against a lot of that these days. And so,
and then we build up to, at the end of our project, we go to NDSU and Concordia. This year was new, we added Concordia, and they read their story out loud for a public audience. And then we've been asked to do other readings at nursing homes and bookstores and other places. And then we publish the book, and we have a spiral bound published book, and we've sent it to every single state and territory in the last 2 years, to governors, to legislators. We sent it to Ellen this year. In other years we've sent it, yes.
What?
Yeah, Vaughn, I know. I'll send them your copies too, but Vaughn really wanted to send it to Ellen. So we sent it to Ellen, and we've sent it to Scholastic and other organizations, and anyone who wants one, because it's covered from a grant. But getting the stories out there and putting them on the internet for free, we have our own website, and they can read all the ebooks on our website.
We also have take a couple individuals from a couple of our students at a time they've gone to nursing homes. That's a very fun reading that we've done, because those friends at the nursing home, they just are very attentive. Some of them have never seen someone who doesn't look like them, and if they have, you know, they're probably working at the nursing home maybe. So some of the comments that our students get, one lady said, I've never seen someone like you, I've never heard someone like you, but I think I like you. And you know, that's progress. Green Card Voices did some readings in some very small towns around North Dakota and some churches. And we've done the international potluck with my students as well. And so anywhere we can go, people just need to hear the stories. It's very interesting to learn about other people, and storytelling is like the oldest entertainment in the world, right? So you look at that, and it's something that people can enjoy. And we're also, you know, teaching about the cultures, which I think is one of the most important things. And I guess the one thing too that wasn't planned in this, well, there's a lot of things that weren't planned that just happened, but I guess as a speech and debate coach, what kind of I look back and think, oh, I'm glad it went here, was the public readings that we do at Concordia and NDSU, because the students take a 3 to 4 minute section of their story, and they go up and they read it in front of all those people, hundreds of people at times, and this is their like second, third, fourth language, and they're nervous and they're different from everyone else. And so that's really something that I've noticed in our population, our school's population, as far as speaking, that we don't do enough of. with our students is really practicing formal speaking, even just partner speaking, and how to speak to teachers even. And so that's one of my initiatives, I hope, is to bring back a required communications course for our school, in that they can teach these skills to possibly ninth graders, so that then they can go on and be able to engage in conversation in their classrooms. I mean, and maybe they will go and do some public speaking and later, but just getting those skills is so important. And I look and see how my EL kids who are refugees with all of these barriers and obstacles and multiple languages can go up in front of people at NDSU and do this. And yes, they're nervous, but you have to build a very structured, safe environment for them to do it, because they're nervous. They come in. I have kids that are going to be with me next year come in my room and say, I don't think I can do it. I'm like, don't worry. We walk you through every little step. And by the end, I've never had a kid say, oh, I'm not going to do this. Like, they get excited, they're nervous, and they get up there and they do it. And they're amazing.
Has telling your story changed what it feels like to be in Fargo South?
When I was new here, in the United States, I mean, my English was, not good. I was not really fluent in speaking English. And comparing to that days now, I mean, I do talk to, white kids now, back then. I feel so uncomfortable talking to them, but I do now. And I mean, obviously, I didn't know any English back then, but now I'm comparing to those days, I'm fluent in English now. Not really fluent, but you know what I mean.
I'll say I kind of changed my relationship with a couple of my friends, because when I first came here, my friends would be like, "Oh, is China like so communist? Like they control everything. Like you don't have freedom over there. You can't do anything over there." And after I read my story and they actually asked me about China, and then they actually sit down and listen to me, it's like, oh, it's not that bad actually. Like China wasn't that bad, to be honest. Okay. But it's like it did change a lot of my relationship. I feel way more confident right now because I kind of slowly catching up. Not slowly, but faster. But well, I kind of catching up, and then just everything seemed normal to me. I feel confident talking in front of people. I can sit down with people having a conversation.
I feel like it helps other people to get to know you more better. Even teachers, I remember when they showed I think I read it at school. Yeah, I read my story at school with the language classes, I think it was. Yeah, and then teachers that I had they didn't know I was from Mexico. They would ask me, they're like, "Oh, so you're from Mexico? When did you come?" And they would start asking more stuff, and they would not just be more interested in my story, but me personally.
I feel really confident now. Yeah, because I wrote my story in my freshman year, and that time, I mean, I was a shy person, I was a mousy girl, I'd say. And when we finish our writing, we have to that time in my freshman year, we went to NDSU and then read our story in front of Native American people there, NDSU students. And then we read our story there, and then I read my story a couple times here at school, and I also recently won a award. I entered this writing contest from NDSU, and I won this award from there. And there was this guy at the event, and he also made all winners to speak in front of people. There were lots of people, and for me it was not really hard to speak in front of the people, because I was used to it. Yeah, I mean, my confidence levels goes
That's
up.
great.
Thanks so much for sharing this whole project, all of these ideas. There are so many layers in here, but so many. Yes, it's about writing, but everything that you've talked about, this is really about so much more. The writing, to me, is feeling more and more like the writing is like the conduit, and it's the tool that is being used, but the purpose is so much bigger.
That's kind of how I see it. for a second, I'm like, oh yeah, we do writing. Of course we do writing, but we do so much more.
You probably hear this a lot, but really this is a powerful story and just a really great gift that you're giving these students. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems very natural. It's fun. I guess I should say that. It's just fun.